Loud and Quiet presents Midnight Chats.
Welcome to Midnight Chats. We've reached episode 13 of our podcast. We hope you've been enjoying it. I certainly enjoyed the last couple of episodes. We had Matt Berry on a few weeks ago, and we also had the most recent episode 12, was recorded with Anna Meredith on site at the End of the Road Festival. And that was the first time we've recorded one of these in front of a live studio audience, if you like. And she was really great, thoroughly interesting, and a really, really good chat. Those are still available to listen to now, as are all of our previous podcasts on Midnight Chats with the likes of Metronomy and Bat for Lashes and John Hopkins and Sol Williams. They're all there to listen to if you do want to go back and visit those. And if it's helpful, you can, if you subscribe to our podcast, you get one of those little notifications that comes up on your phone to tell you when we've got a new episode. So that's helpful. And also, if you do like what you hear, do leave us a review as well, because apparently that's a very good thing in terms of spreading the word about Midnight Chats. We've been loving doing this. We kind of started in spring, and we're now in autumn, and we've had some brilliant guests, so we hope that you're enjoying what you hear. Speaking of spring, my guests on the podcast this week, the project that they just put out, we didn't even know existed at that point. It only got announced at the end of the summer, and they've just recently put out an album that we've been really enjoying, which is why we wanted to go and speak to them. They are Hamilton Leithauser and Rostam Batmanjili, which I hope I've pronounced correctly. I'm pretty sure that's close, at least. They've got a project, it's called Hamilton and Rostam, and you might know them for their other work with their other previous bands. Hamilton's the lead singer with New York band The Walkmen, who are, I think, taking a break at the moment, but certainly made some fantastic records in the last kind of 10-15 years. And Rostam, up until the start of this year, was part of Vampire Weekend as a songwriter and multi-instrumentalist. He left at the start of 2016 to work on his solo stuff, this project, and also he's produced for the likes of Frank Ocean and Solange Knowles, done loads of stuff. Now, we met earlier this week in a studio space in southeast London, in the middle of a housing estate, I guess. Downstairs in this venue, there was some huge, kind of fantastically well-equipped studios, amazing instruments and all the rest of it. We did the podcast, we recorded the podcast upstairs in that studio in a sort of lounge area. Hamilton had pretty much just stepped off a plane from New York, and Rostam had been recording with another artist that day in the studio. We talked about loads of different stuff. If you haven't heard any of their music yet, you may have without even knowing, because they've got a track being used on the new Apple iPhone advert, which I think, in terms of like sync deals for bands, I don't think it really gets much bigger than that. So I asked them about that, and it was interesting to hear their thoughts, and also to hear them both talk about what it's like having people discover your music in that way. Hamilton was talking about how a lot of people had discovered the Walkmen through seeing them on the teen program The OC from many years ago, and we also talked about the time they spent in Washington, because they're both from Washington, and some of the album was written in Rostam's family home, and we talked about Christmas time and the times that they used to kind of meet up to make and write this record. And we talked about podcasts as well, because Hamilton's wife makes a politically slanted podcast, sort of investigative journalism, so that was really interesting hearing about that. So yeah, thanks for listening to Midnight Chats. This is episode 13 with Hamilton and Rostam. Guys, welcome to Midnight Chats. It's a pleasure to have you on our podcast.
Thanks for having us.
Normally we record the podcast in our little office, which is kind of in East London. Just tell us a bit about where we are and just kind of describe the surroundings of where we are.
We're at a recording studio called The Pool, and we're in I guess, Southwark.
You Southwark, Southwark, yeah.
Is that? I'm not saying it right.
That's fine. I think that's what I called it before I came to London.
Near Bermondsey?
Yeah.
Did I say that right?
Yeah. It's a pretty cool space. Like, so we're south
of the Thames.
That's
right. Is an easy way of saying it.
As we're sat here, we're in a kind of lounge area where there's table football. We've got a massive TV, we've got a record player, we've got some vinyl up there. This is kind of like the lounge area of pretty nice studio, isn't it, really? Like downstairs, how would you describe, so the room that you've been working in today, like the amount of instruments that are there and kind of, you know, fairly typical studio or kind of high-end studio?
You know, it's funny, I was actually having this conversation with the artist that I was working with earlier today, that I don't really like recording in studios, and I haven't done it very much, and I like recording at home more.
So this is a bit different for you, like doing some work like this today.
Yeah, I just feel like when there's a studio that you book out, it's like you feel like every moment has to matter, and you feel like under the gun, and I don't know, it doesn't inspire me the way that working from home does. Like when we made the record together, me and Hamilton, we really only recorded in a studio one day and recorded all the drums for the record in that day, and everything was sort of planned out so we could make the most of that time.
Yeah.
And you know, as soon as we got, you know, a sound going, we just kind of plugged away, and you know, 13 hours later, most of the drums for the record were done. Sometimes when you're just trying to like record vocals or something, like doing it in a studio that you've booked out, it can make it hard to feel like relaxed and to feel inspired in the way that I think yields the best takes.
So given the choice, like if you feel kind of comfortable recording in like your own studio back home, or somebody says have a day in kind of Abbey Road, would you take that over a day in kind of the world's top end studio?
I don't know. I've been to some pretty nice studios, but I've never recorded in Abbey Road. So I'd be curious about that experience. But I don't know, maybe if you could book a month there and then feel like it was yours for a month, and then you wouldn't feel like under the gun, and you wouldn't feel like you had to get things right in that time. What's
your kind of your setup at home then? Like, kind of describe what your studio is like. You're recording back home. It's Los Angeles, right?
Yes, behind my house. Where I live, I rent these sort of 3 houses. It's kind of a compound. There's a main house. It's a very small house, but it's comfortable to live in. And then there's this guest house, which is kind of like a cottage. Some people call it the dollhouse.
Okay.
And it, you know, it's basically like one room with a miniature kitchen and a bathroom. And that's actually where Hamilton slept when he came and stayed with me when we were making the record.
You put him in the doll's house.
I
feel like a giant.
He was comfortable there.
I was. That's my spot.
So there's those 2 living spaces, and then I have I guess it was once a garage that was converted. It's been converted, and it's been a studio for so long that I don't know, I think of it as the studio.
Yeah.
You know, it's like the size of a pretty big garage. I put white carpet down, so it's like you have to take your shoes off.
Okay.
And it's kind of like comfortable, like you can lie down on the floor if you want to lie down on the floor, you know.
No stressful moments.
There's a big L-shaped white couch, so, you know, like you can lie down on the couch if you want, or you can stand up, you know. And the way I like to do things is to have everything sort of mic'd up at all times. When we were working on this record, like me and Hamilton were kind of like, we would oftentimes like trade instruments and be like, oh, I want you to try an acoustic guitar take, and then I'd be like, oh, I want to try a 12-string take, and we kind of be like passing different guitars around. I'd always have a couple different mics set up, so he could do vocals, I could do a vocal harmony. We could kind of just like move really fast, because there's vocals at the end of the song Peaceful Morning where we recorded both of our voices sing at the same time with one mic. Okay. Which is really dumb on one level, because it's like, what if one person's really in tune and what if one person's really out of tune? Like, but you just have to find the right takes. We were both screaming, so it kind of didn't matter.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I feel like in those kind of those kind of moments, like, you wouldn't let yourself get away with at a studio that you hired. You kind of want to do everything like more cleanly or clinically, and if there's an engineer there, they would try to sort of push you to. So most of the time, I don't know. Most of the time the recording process was the two of us, and we were kind of engineering ourselves and just able to record quickly.
So we're about 24 hours out from you guys playing your first London show together. I should probably say that, so we're recording this podcast on a Tuesday night, and the guys are playing a show at Hoxton Hall in London on the Wednesday night. So we've kind of got 24 hours, and, well, you'll pretty much be on stage this time tomorrow. You've only played a handful of shows so far, right?
We've only played 2 shows. One real show.
Maybe 3.
Some radio shows that were in front of an audience. But in terms of, people buying tickets and walking into the nightclub, we've played 1.
And how did the kind of dynamic of performing, because obviously being in the studio recording a record together is one thing, but then going onto stage and putting together a performance.
We wrote all these songs and recorded them simultaneously, and we would do major edits while we recorded them. So until that first show the other day, we had literally never played them and didn't know who was going to play what, and what they were going to sound like, or how to make a set list. I've been playing in my other band for so many years. You get the sense of how a set is going to go. This is just sort of like free for all.
I mean, you're both experienced performers, so how do you feel when it comes to writing that first set list as this kind of project, and just in those moments before going onto the stage?
Was it easy? It was easy, I think.
It was kind of easy.
It was.
We were just.
I don't remember of any argument.
I have to use it, when I play slide guitar, I have to use this one tuning that's a little bit different from the standard guitar tuning. So I like to put those songs next to each other, because otherwise I'm going to be having to retune.
And are you happy about the way that the songs that you've recorded, you've managed to kind of bring to life on stage? I mean, it's one of the. I mean, I love the record, but and the way it's produced is obviously fantastic. So then transporting that sound onto the stage is always going to be a kind of.
We don't try to recreate every second, but I think we did a pretty darn for
I'm
4
surprised.
people.
I like the way you guys
about
have positive feedback on yourselves. It's good.
Well, it was really fun. Our first show was I sort of can't wait to do it again.
I think we were surprised when we were driving somewhere after that first show in New York, and we listened back and we were like, oh shit, we did a pretty good job of recreating the sound on the record. That sounds a lot like the record,
So in terms of going back to the beginnings of kind of your friendship and this project, you've kind of talked a bit about how you came to know each other because Vampire Weekend supported the Walkmen at the show in Athens, Georgia. Is that right? But did you meet? I also read that the first time you actually met Rostam was when Ezra was doing some interning at your studio. Is that right?
I didn't meet Rostam then, actually.
Okay.
I met Ezra, and then I guess I met one of your other friends who didn't get the job.
Oh, really?
Some other guy. I don't remember his name.
I don't remember that. I do remember Ezra saying that you guys didn't have that much work for him, but he did hold a light for the filming of a Rat video.
Right, he was there when we filmed the video for the Rat.
And he held a spotlight or something. That's all.
I remember that we hired an intern, and then a week later we were all sort of why the hell did we hire an intern? What does an intern do? And then we liked him, but we didn't really have much work for him to do. It was a very badly run business.
So when it came to that first, when the show where Vampire Weekend supported the Walkmen, was that the first time you guys got the chance to really kind of meet and chat about music? And
we didn't really talk about music very much, I don't think. I think I probably came off as a youngster.
Oh, really?
As a young kid. JV. Do you have that term in the UK, JV?
JV?
It's not varsity, it's junior varsity.
No, I don't know. Is that the kind of young football pretender kind of music?
What do they call it? First string, second string?
Yeah, you have first team and your second team, I guess. Yeah,
it's just like a sports metaphor.
So you were a fan.
I can only use sports metaphors ironically. I don't know if that. I wonder if that comes across in a podcast.
So when did you first kind of meet up and start thinking about making some music? Because you're both from or have family homes in Washington D.C. Is that right?
Right, but we never met there. We do have mutual friends or acquaintances, but we didn't.
But we were both like 5 years apart, and we lived there from like age 0 to 18. So
It's a big difference when you're a teenager.
Oh, definitely, yeah. That's a whole secondary school.
Yeah, exactly.
So you
So
didn't.
we didn't.
yeah, I was like 13 when Hamilton moved out of Washington D.C. So
Okay.
yeah, we didn't have
Talking
much.
about a little squirt.
We didn't have much occasion to hang out in D.C., but
But
Actually-
we have a little bit when we started recording. We did a lot of recording and songwriting in DC, actually. And it was kind of fun being there together and going down to some familiar spot that we'd both been to, like the Tombs or something like that. Some spot that had been there forever that we both had been to, in the 80s.
Was it your
not the 80s.
I don't know.
The
what
90s. The 90s.
For me, probably the 80s.
you did some writing at your family home, right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. And is that
Well,
how I imagine, like, kind of like, were your family there at the time and you were kind of like, writing songs, recording stuff?
Yeah.
Well, the reason we ended up doing that, I mean, because we were living in different cities, so even like just to be in the same city for like a couple of weeks or a week for the holidays, it just felt like it would be a good opportunity. It would be a waste not to take advantage of being in the same city and get a couple days in and get some work done.
Yeah. In my kind of imagination, if you were kind of back at your family home doing that, have you got like, was you kind of like your parents kind of knocking around? Was there like Christmas decorations up? Describe to me what the scenario was.
I remember the Christmas decorations being up when we were in my apartment, actually, in New York, and writing 1,000 times. I don't remember your house being that decked out for Christmas, was it? Did you guys have a tree?
We have had trees in the past. I think my parents have kind of maybe lost the excitement about Christmas as their kids have
But it felt
aged.
very seasonal. I mean, it's
Yes.
fun when you're home and you're in your parents' house. I mean, I have kids and stuff, so even when I go back to DC and I'm staying at my parents' house for like a couple days, you sort of revert in a lot of ways to your like childhood self. I think that happens to
I think
everybody.
there's definitely some leftover turkey and some leftover roast beef.
Do you guys have a real tree? Because that's always the debate in my family house, whether you get a real Christmas tree that you actually go to the field and like get chopped down for you or whatever, or whether you get like the plastic version of the Christmas
Do
tree.
you guys really go to a field and get it chopped down?
Yeah.
Oh man,
In,
I bought it on
In-
the corner of Fulton and Lafayette.
in DC, there's this place, what's it called? Wisconsin. There's that little park right before.
Idaho. Oh no, that mass in Idaho. That was what.
It had a funny name too.
Wait,
Charlie's
Wisconsin
Trees or
and Wisconsin and what?
It's like Wisconsin, like before the cathedral and stuff. Between like Burleith and
Burleith? What's that?
Burleith. It's like north. Burleith is a neighborhood behind Wisconsin, like on Tunlaw.
That's called Burleith?
You didn't know that?
No, I've never heard that in my life.
It's like upper. Some people call it like Upper Georgetown or something.
There's always sort of a sketchy element in that neighborhood. My friend got mugged at gunpoint in that.
Are you sure in Burleith?
Positive. Well, if I didn't know it was Burleith at the time, right at that Tunlaw area.
Maybe that's another neighborhood. Like by the time you're at Tunlaw, maybe it's Burleith.
I know Tunlaw very well because my ex-girlfriend's entire family lives on Tunlaw.
Do you know Tunlaw is walnut spelled
So I know
backwards?
pretty.
I think
I
that's
didn't know
why
that.
that's why it's called Tunlaw,
Really?
because it's walnut spelled backwards.
Well, that's that trashy Georgetown student mess everywhere.
We're talking
Yeah.
about DC. We're going
Sorry.
real deep.
Okay,
For
we're
this
talking
podcast. I feel like this
DC
podcast
Should be
geography.
edited.
has a very British listenership who's going to be scratching their heads.
I think it's interesting because DC, I've been to DC, and like, how would your experience of DC, how would you describe it to people that haven't been? Because when I went there, for me I noticed there's a kind of big contrast. You've obviously got the centre of town with all your kind of historic monuments, everything, the iconic landmarks that people know. Crime.
It depends on which direction you go from where you're talking about. Because
Okay.
it's a very segregated city. And if you go towards the northwest, where Rostam and I grew up, it's quite beautiful. And very affluent, actually. Basically,
I think it's a mix.
Most of it. Well,
it's a mix of people.
If you go,
Yeah.
you'll feel that way if you go southeast or you go northeast.
But there's nice.
You get to what was formerly a beautiful neighborhood that's now just like this horrible ghetto, and it's still really bad.
But DC's changed a lot since we left.
DC said, "Oh my god!" Apparently, they have. I was just talking to my friend. They have this huge surplus of cash in the DC government now, which is like so funny to hear. When we grew up, it was like the government was broke and the city was just run like a mess. I mean, it still was nice around where we grew up, but in terms of like how the city was run, it was completely corrupt, and the mayor smoked crack and stuff. But now they have all these. Now it's becoming so popular with like millennials buying condos downtown,
Right.
that the tax revenue has gone through the roof, and they're like trying to build all these parks, and I don't know.
So there's money to be spent on
fancy it
DC.
up.
Okay.
It's funny that you like reference where we grew up in that way, because I thought where I went to school, kids had parents who didn't want their kid to come to my house to play because they were like, we don't want our kid going into DC. Like, DC's not safe.
Yeah, within the city lines.
Yeah,
people used to ask.
It's weird.
So they used to
me
live
what-
out of town and come into school. Like that was a
Well, I went to a school that was right outside of DC in
Right.
Virginia.
okay.
And there were kids whose parents were just like, we don't want our, like, I could tell like they were nervous about their kid coming to my house.
It was
to
a dangerous
play.
city. It was a very, very dangerous city.
But then at the
A
same
long
time,
ago.
some people would say like, "Oh, you don't know DC. Like, you grew up in the nice part of DC." It's like, it's just interesting. That, like, it's all relative, you know. Like,
My experience before going to DC was viewed through the kind of like Ian Mackay lens of sort of Fugazi and those underground bands and that DIY culture of the sort of 80s and 90s, and that made me really excited about going to DC, and I loved it. I loved going to the record stores and stuff, but it just felt like a really intriguing place to visit because it felt like it had so many different sides. Do you still enjoy going back home there? Like, do you enjoy spending time there? Do you still
Yeah,
consider
of course,
it
I
home?
love seeing my family, and I have some friends there still. But I'm not going to move there anytime soon.
In terms of when it came down to the making of the record, then you wrote some of the songs when you were at home in DC, but then you kind of took yourselves off to LA for a period to record the majority of it. Is that right?
well, I live in LA and I have for the last 3 years. So the first time we got together to work on the record was in LA, and that was in July 2014. And we would kind of, Hamilton would do trips out to LA for like 5 or 10 days at a time, and he'd come and stay with me, and we just kind of work on the record every day when he was there and get a bunch done. A couple of times his wife and his kids came down to LA too, and we were able to get some work done.
Did you make it into a holiday?
Yeah, we rented a house one time. That was a long time. That must have been early on. Yeah, it was fun. Brought the kids out, worked all day with Rostam, changed diapers all night.
You had double duty.
Oh man, you had double shifts.
It was a lot more fun when I came out alone. It
Because
really
you could
was.
sleep through the night.
Sleep through the night, operate on like a single man schedule. It was kind of great.
Did you keep a schedule when you were doing that, or were you just like...
We both are very early risers, and we both like to get a lot done during the day, which is nice because I've like some of the guys in Walkmen like to work really late at night and stuff, and I've just never been able to do that. I just can't stay up that late.
What was the first song that you guys wrote for this record?
Well, it's hard to say because even though, like I said, we started in 2014 on what we thought would be like this. Well, we just thought we should make more songs together because we really enjoyed making like I Retired and Alexandra, and we were just like, let's keep making songs together. So that coming together in the summer of 2014 was actually predated by a session which was the first time we worked together in like maybe like fall of 2012, and we started the song in 1959. And the music for that song was something that I had written in 2008. and I was just like, Hamilton, I have this thing, maybe you should try singing on it.
Okay, so it took 6 years to get his vocal down on a piece of music that he wrote with his vocal in mind.
No, because
Well, did I have Hamilton in mind for 1959 when I wrote it? I don't know. I was just kind of like writing music. I was just like, I want to make something like that sounds French. That was my objective.
Right.
And then I just sat on it. I didn't know what it would be right for, like who it would be right for, or what if it was like for a movie or something. I didn't know. But then when I had Hamilton in my studio, I was like, you know what? Maybe this guy, maybe it'd be just right for him. But so we started working on that, and it took, that was 2012. It took like 3 or 4 years to finish the songwriting. But then also, Hamilton has things that were kicking around in his lyrics notepad, virtual notepad, USB stick, hard drive.
that might go all the way back to analog,
Are
actually.
you guys, are you an iPhone notes man, or are you
I am
He
now.
is. He got me hooked on the notes life, but
It's very handy.
I was going to say, what some of that stuff is from like 2001,
2002, I think, were a lot of the lyrics for You Ain't That Young Kid.
Okay.
I would have written them for like the second Walkmen record, but they never made it on that.
And then they were adapted and
Yeah, they were reconfigured.
Now that the album's out there, did you have any kind of like hopes and desires for its kind of like for its reception, or how people would kind of what they'd think of it, or were you just like, we've made this record, we're just going to put it out there and see what happens?
I guess, I mean, on a very basic level, I felt like Hamilton was one of my favorite singers, and I felt like I had an opportunity as a producer to kind of like bang down on the door of being like, hey, this guy, he's good, he's special. I like him. There's a reason I like him, and I want the world to know why. Because, like, what better way than to make a record with somebody than and try to make it as good as it can be. I don't know.
Yeah, no,
that's like my basic motivation. So,
And what have you been pleased with the reaction? Like, kind of, I mean, I know you've only been
Yeah, very much so. I'm really happy with the way people are taking it so far.
both of us were outside of any record contracts that tied us down. So I did kind of think, like, let's just make this record, let's finish it, and then find a label.
Well, I've never done that before, and I really liked doing that. It's great because when you're playing stuff for people, it's not like, well, this is gonna sound better, and this is gonna be changed, and it's just like, this is it.
Yeah. Is that a continual frustration when you're working with somebody who's basically setting your deadline, when they kind of like come in and, you know, put their fingers into the project, if you like?
I've never had anyone tell me what to do.
I've had people do that.
I know it's a privilege, but I've also, maybe the fact that I've been producer on pretty much every recording I've been involved with means that, like, I don't know, maybe I couldn't have it another way. Like, I don't know what it'd be like for someone to be like, oh yeah, we think that this could be better if.
How do you think you deal with that situation? You do kind of...
I've done some work on film scores, and in that situation, it's like, I recognize going in, like, you have to make the people happy. You're getting hired to do a service. Like, you want to be as creative as you can be, but ultimately you want the people that you're collaborating with to be happy. Whereas I feel like the music I make in the world of songs, it's like, I want to be happy, and I want to feel like it's pushing things.
We had our last guest on the podcast was an artist called Anna Meredith, and she's a British electronic artist, experimental. She's a composer, and 90% of her time is spent composing for commercial clients or for films or for TV, and then she's kind of like 10-15 years into her career, and she's only made her first kind of solo record now. And it was interesting hearing
Does she sing on it, or is it instrumental?
It's instrumental, yeah, but it's kind of, it's all performed on live instruments. But it was interesting hearing her point of view. She'd only ever really made music for hire, if you like, been given a brief, and then suddenly she was like, no, I've put together enough money to basically make my own solo record, and I'll see what it sounds like. And it was interesting hearing her about her experience, because she actually found that, while kind of freeing, quite challenging, because she'd only ever worked to a paragraph of kind of brief, I want X kind of style music to go on my TV advert about a car or something. So could you ever imagine, have you ever worked to a brief like that? It sounds like you've kind of done some film work, and you might have worked in that fashion, but...
I've written some things for other people a little bit, and I've been doing a podcast recently, actually, that my wife is producing, and she hired me to do all the music. It's sort of fun, but I don't think it's entirely for me to be given like a prescription of what people want. I don't think that's something that I'm going to continue doing very much.
I actually I really like the idea of it, like for movies. Like if a movie's like, hey, we want a song and we want it to be like romantic, or we want it to be
if it's a song
cinematic.
That sounds interesting to me. If somebody's like, I want a love song, then I wrote some things for my friend's TV show. He's a producer and he has a TV show that he's doing, and I wrote the theme song, and I wrote another. They told me a situation that they wanted, and I wrote another song, and honestly they both I think came out really well, and they were really happy with it, luckily. But that was really fun, just because it was like, we need a guy in this situation. Here's the song, and the other thing is they only had to be about a minute long, so you could just sort of come up with one part, and that was really fun. But I don't see that as being a career for me.
One of the tracks on the record has ended up being used on the new Apple iPhone advert, which is crazy in terms of an exposure. But like, had a company come to you and said, we want some music for an advert that we've made, you've obviously lent a track to be used for that, but would it have been a weird thing to be able to like commissioned for an advert?
I did that once, and I'll never do it again.
Really?
Well, I did it just to see if I enjoyed it, and I did what I thought was a good job, and they didn't like it, and I thought, you know what, fuck you.
I don't know. My first job out of college was working for a film composer named Craig Wedren.
Okay.
He's a lead singer of a DC band called Shudder to Think. They were a Discord band. Mm-hmm. But he's done a bunch of film scores, and he still does film scores. And when I was 22, about 10 years ago, my first job out of college was working with him and helping him and writing music with him. And it was interesting. And I don't know, I took pleasure in it, and I learned a lot, and he gave me a lot of sounds, and he upgraded my computer, and I used those sounds, and I used that computer to record the first Vampire Weekend album. So I don't know, I'm indebted, as my career as a producer is definitely indebted to working in film in some capacity, writing film music.
Obviously the music's ended up on like the iPhone advert, for example, which I imagine in this day and age is kind of like the golden ticket for any artist in terms of like...
Well, yeah, I mean, it's nice because we made most of this record in my home studio. We spent one day in a studio for hire out of... How many days do you think we spent making this record? I'm actually curious to think maybe like 40 days, 50 days?
Something like that sounds right, yeah.
So we really spent our own time, energy, and money making this record.
And the total...
We didn't take a big advance. So when we got the iPhone commercial, what it meant was that like every record that we sell, every physical copy, we earn something from, which is kind of nice. Because we spent a lot of time like making the vinyl, like trying to make it like a cool document of the record, like having pictures of us in the studio working on the record. I had my dad like write out the lyrics from the record with his handwriting. Me and Hamilton did a lot of back and forth on the layout, on the design, and
it could afford you the opportunity to kind of all of the elements that you really wanted to go into the project to be appreciated as well. Then,
Yeah, maybe. Maybe. I don't know. We didn't know that we were going to get an iPhone commercial when we were spending all that time getting the art just right.
Yeah.
No, you
But
do
it's
it with
good.
no guarantees.
It's good.
When you're making it, yeah.
It's
You're
good that we
thinking,
made something that's worth buying, and hopefully, like, people who buy the vinyl are like telling their friends, like, "Oh, you should get the vinyl." There's like cool pictures of them making the album, and there's cool like lyrics in there. And
as an artist, how does it feel if somebody because some people will discover your music now through that. So if you meet somebody at a show and they say, "Yeah, I heard the track on the advert," like, is that fine? Is that like
It's weird. I've had it before. I had a big ad when I was younger, and a lot of people discovered my band through it. This car ad, which is a lot less like
stigmatizing or more
I
stigmatizing.
mean, yeah, and it was also at a time where people didn't do it all the time yet,
Oh,
so
yeah.
we got thrown under the bus for having accepted it, and then right after that, everybody was like, "Wait a second, maybe that's a good idea. We should."
I think it.
But
I
then
think
we were also-
You guys had back in those days. You guys were considered like one of the coolest bands around, and like I feel like it didn't really put a dent in
It didn't
that
hurt.
armor.
It didn't hurt that much, but we definitely caught a little flack. But then we were on this TV show one time called The OC, which is the sort of like soap opera for teenagers in Southern California.
But that show has a real cult following.
Yeah, but the amount of people over the years that have told me that they discovered my band through The OC is just it has never
Yeah.
ceased to amaze me.
Actually, I have a funny story for you
It's
about
just
that.
so weird because that was such a small little thing for us that we did in a day, and it became this like. I mean, people still tell me that.
Yeah, I have a funny story for that. One time, I ran into Lorde at a music festival, and she was asking me what I was up to, and I said that I was making a record with the lead singer from the Walkmen, and she was like, "Who?" And I was like, "Well, didn't I see you like tweet some of his lyrics on your Twitter account?" And she kind of gave me a funny look. And then she was like, "Oh yeah, the band from the OC." And it's interesting because she's like really young, like so she was
18,
like
19,
she
yeah.
missed it by like 5 or 10 years.
Right, that's all it takes.
The OC, but like at some point she watched every episode of the OC. So maybe
She
people
was
will.
plowing through them on her Roku at home.
She's got the DVD stuff.
There you
Yeah.
go.
Is it, I mean, does it nag you then that is something that happens, or is it just something that you've long kind of?
You know, it does
made
make me
peace with?
realize that sometimes you need. My band were so not careful about like,
You mean you
public perception or
You
like,
said no to a lot of stuff.
we said no to a lot of stuff. We said yes to a lot of stuff for stupid little reasons because nobody was paying attention. We would make our record and that was it. And then it's just such a brainless animal when it comes to five guys who basically don't want to talk to each other. Not because unfriendly, but because we end up having to talk to each other so much. So when it comes down to some little decision about do you do this or do you do that, we just didn't think. We did. Nobody was in charge. And I realize now that some of those things just like last and become so important, and little quotes and interviews and stuff that just follow you around. They can sometimes maybe it's smarter to be a little bit more careful.
Really?
Well, I remember when we got our first big sync. It was for a movie called Step Brothers.
Cool.
And
Spoke to one of my colleagues.
and I think it was like 2007 or 2008. Maybe our record hadn't even come out yet. And we had to have
What's
this.
this guy doing? Should we take it?
This is part of this podcast is coming live and direct.
It's authentic.
From
This is fine. We
lounge
might keep it in.
at the pool recording studio.
So yeah, we're in the lounge and a guy's just coming and put the kettle on because why not?
I think there was a sense of hesitation that, in retrospect, I feel like so many people heard about us from watching Step Brothers.
And how does that feel like?
Step Brothers has a cult following as a film. It's some people's most beloved Will Ferrell film.
People hold it dear.
So it would have been a real mistake to say no.
Yeah. If people came to you in 5 or 10 years time ago, I love that record that you made, Hamilton and Rostam, but I heard about it on the iPhone advert. You're just like, well,
I think it's more respectable to be involved with a very, very creative, like an innovative company like Apple. To be honest, I actually do. I mean, I've had so many syncs in my lifetime, like movies and ads and stuff like that, and this one just feels like at least they put a lot of effort into it, and they're trying to make, and it looks really cool. And at least it's not just like some vague corporate thing that's thrown together. Somebody put thought into making that thing.
Tell me about the podcast that you've been working on. That sounds quite exciting.
It's called The Wall and Broadcast. It's produced by my wife, full disclosure. But it's very interesting. And they actually just had a big article in Business Insider on them because they it's great. It's sort of interesting angles on financial like happenings, but that very unexpected. Like last week they did a episode on what happens when money stops working, or you're in a place where you can't have money. So they interviewed people who were in Zimbabwe and had like a $100 trillion bill that has 27 zeros and is worth $0. Right. And they also interviewed this guy who was in prison in downtown New York somewhere, and he was talking about all of the things that they use as currency in prison. And it gets really graphic, actually, but it was just really interesting to see how people like develop currency when money ggets taken away.
I mean, so each episode's focusing on.
Well, like the first episode was "Are the markets rigged?" and it was "Are the stock markets rigged? Is it possible for you to buy a stock at a fair price?"
Do you hear Anna?
And the answer is no. It's not possible anymore. But there's a lot of people that will argue against. There's a lot of people that are being paid a lot of money to argue in the other.
Do you hear
direction.
Anna's voice in the podcast?
Yeah, she comes on every once in a while.
Oh,
she does it all. She does absolutely everything except the music, which I do.
Wait, what kind of music do you write? Piano music, guitar music?
I've done it all, man. I do like sort of funny, kind of kitschy stuff, and then I do, like when there's a guy, it's supposed to be the positive sides of the market. They want something happy and elated, and then they've got the dark side of the market, and they want something. I wrote something that was like too scary, and everyone was like, "Okay, this is like The Exorcist. This is too scary. This isn't evil." Amazing. So then you got to find a little. That's sort of fun to do.
It sounds like a really great kind of investigative journalism style podcast.
It is, because the podcast is great, and I think they'll do well because they do have a lot. They are able to, because of the company she works with, they are able to get all these people for interviews. They have like congressmen and CEOs of a lot of companies, and they get a lot of access.
Excellent. We're going to check it out.
Yeah, check it out. The Wall and Broadcast.
I just want to ask about. It seems like kind of like now that you've made the record, you've got together to play some shows. The reception for the album has been really good. Do you think you'll do some more? Are you kind of enjoying yourselves? Will you like carry on making some more music?
I'm going to do a lot of shows but Rostam's going to not be in the band. He's going to go and work on some other stuff.
Okay.
And I'm going to
maybe drop in on some unexpected occasions.
Yeah, every once in a while. But I am going to do a big tour, and I'm very much looking forward to that. Unfortunately, I think it might be in my blood. I fought against it for so many years, touring. But
you still enjoy it?
I think maybe I do like it. I'm sort of embarrassed to admit it.
I've definitely enjoyed playing these shows with Hamilton that we've done.
It's been really fun.
Maybe partly because I know that it's the beginning and the end in sight, with the end in sight, and I'd never have had that in a touring capacity. It's always been like you get a set together, and then the next 18 months, the next 2 years, you're going to be doing that set. So,
So you knew there was going to be a couple of shows to kick this all off, and then
yeah.
And then I've got my band that I'll take.
And I think it'll be, it's nice that I think it was actually really important in retrospect that we do these shows together just to like figure out how to do it, and like I'm gonna have to create a Bible, like the show Bible.
I know. So were you in a couple of Christmases time when the holidays come around and you're both back in DC? We head back and maybe write some more music at some point.
Maybe.
I think it will happen.
I do too. That sounds too fun to pass up. To be honest,
we had this Irish song that I think both of us want to be on some record someday.
Okay. So we've got the French song. We've got some Irish songs coming up.
Yes, the Irish song it didn't make it to this record, but
But we tried, not for lack of trying.
It'll make it to some record someday.
Midnight Chats is a loud and quiet podcast. Production by Emma Snook. Music courtesy of Gold Panda. Search Midnight Chats on iTunes for more episodes and to subscribe. For more information, visit loudandquiet.com.